hockey has taught me over time to be versatile, to roll with the punches, to be, literally and figuratively, and how to adapt to a new environment. We all have our roles. We need to be part of a team, and there's, identifying what's your skill set, mastering your skill set, but as well, how do you introduce some collegiality into the dynamic that is your team?
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to Weiss Advice. I am your host, Yonah Weiss. It's incredible. I have here someone very special. We've had a few celebrities or professional athletes and people who have had their career in the spotlight and then moved into different activities. So Stu Grimson is one of those people who I'm fortunate enough to have with me today. How you doing, Stu?
Hey, wonderful, Yonah. Great to be on. I have looked forward to the podcast for a good long while.
Yeah, as have I. Just to give you a little background, Stu spent 14 years playing in the National Hockey League, professional hockey. If you were a fan of hockey during the 80s, 90s, you may have seen him getting a fist fight or two, earning him the name the Grim Reaper, right? Yeah. Grimson, but
not a nickname that my mother is particularly fond of. Who wants to be given credit for having raised the Grim Reaper, right?
I know. But Stu is a very well-rounded, and in fact, after leaving the hockey league, he went to work as a lawyer, working for the National Hockey League's Players Union and working as an attorney as well. And now has an investing company where he and his wife invest in, many different investment vehicles, including one of the things that I got connected with him is in multifamily property investing, which is pretty cool. So there's a lot of well-rounded. Obviously, I didn't go into too much. I'd love for you to touch on that a little more about what it was like going from, the professional sports career into, law and investing.
Sure. I think the transition started for me well before I ever retired from active play in the NHL, because everybody knows that day is coming. We start out, if you're fortunate enough to kind of carve out a career in pro sports, it's a great career. It's a great lifestyle. Almost regrettably, it comes at an early stage in your life when you're not even in a position to really truly appreciate it. I always say it should come at the end of your life, this career in pro sports, when you've worked so hard and you're really in a place where you can kind of appreciate it.
The retirement league.
Exactly right. So I knew the end was coming at some point in my 30s, hopefully deeper in my 30s. And I think I did retire at 36, 37 years of age. But I knew that education for me was going to be an important part of how I would pivot from pro sports and then ultimately go on to work, another profession. I chose to finish off my undergraduate degree and earn a degree in the law for this very simple reason. And this has kind of borne true for me as time has worn on, Yonah. And it is, I wanted to do a graduate degree, specifically the law, because I thought it would provide me the broadest range of choices, just in terms of career opportunities after I walked away from the game. And, you touched on a few of them. I have been in-house counsel, labor counsel for the Players Union. I have litigated for a private law firm here in downtown Nashville. I now serve as corporate counsel for a company that is not necessarily in the real estate game, but Third Home. We manage a private luxury and travel and property club. And again, I've had these opportunities come my way largely because, that I was able to kind of pivot, invest in my own marketable skills and perhaps add some letters after my name. And the opportunities have been there and I've been able to seize upon them. So that really for me education has been an integral part of me successfully pivoting from pro sports.
Obviously anyone who's in pro sports, as you mentioned, it's a short-lived career. I mean, at
Yeah.
the most, any professional athlete, like the most is, maybe 20 years, 25 maximum. And so as someone who starts off, in their teens or early 20s, you have, many more years around to take advantage of. And, you may not have enough to retire on just from the, the salary during those years. And I think that's great that you're proactive, immediately to kind of pivot into, you're furthering your education and bringing about those opportunities. Just a little background on me and how, I was a big fan of hockey growing up. You may not be able to tell, but I played a little bit. I actually was born in Boston and moved to LA when I was in 1989. So right around when Gretzky came to LA.
Sure.
And so hockey took off in LA, but there's no ice rinks, right? So everyone played street hockey, right? But we were big fans. So, I mean, I actually remember vividly you and Marty McSorley like going.
He was one tough customer. Rode shotgun for Wayne Gretzky for a lot of years. Marty McSorley did, but he was a great pro.
Yeah. So, I mean, that to me, that's impressive. When I see someone who is a professional athlete, and obviously you had your ins, your outs, in that your bouts, so to speak, but to go into another field, to be able to take that, what kind of, skills would you say you took from professional sports that has allowed you to kind of flourish in your investing and your furthering your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know that I've ever been asked that, but it really is a great question. And I will say this, I made the point about education and how much that really assisted me in kind of making a successful pivot from a life in pro sports. But the game itself opened up a lot of doors for me. Yeah. It really did. The fact that, you've had a career of some length in the NHL or in a professional sport kind of gets the attention of folks who, whether you're involved in a specific real estate opportunity or some kind of a vocational opportunity, it just kind of gets people sitting up in their chair. But at the end of the day, you as an individual, you as a professional, though the door has been open for you, you got to kind of deliver. You got to be able to bring some value to the table. And no question, I think my background in education has assisted me in that way. But more to your point, my background in the game, I think for these reasons. And, I could probably touch on 2 or 3 at this point. When you spend really, your youth and your adult life to that point, as you're kind of carving out a career in pro sports, you're part of a team. Yeah. You're always going to be part of, and for me, in my situation, I was very much a role player. I'm not a 30, 40 goal guy. You mentioned it. I'm a bit of a grinder. I'm the ham and eggs, 4th line left winger kind of guy. So nobody knew better than me. Essential to team success is you got to find a niche. You've got to master your niche, and you've got to do the best you can for your group each and every night out. You're all trying to build something in terms of club success. So that for me was, I think, a tremendous kind of background to grow up in, because, as we pivot and go on to do other things, you at Madison Specs, me here at Third Home, or me as the member of a law firm, we all have our roles. We need to be part of a team, and there's, identifying what's your skill set, mastering your skill set, but as well, how do you introduce some collegiality into the dynamic that is your team? And that's kind of a relational aspect. That's probably one of the second points I picked up as part of my part of the career in pro sports, is just how to work well with others. And I think, hockey has taught me over time to be versatile, to roll with the punches, to be, literally and figuratively, and how to adapt to a new environment if circumstances do change. So it's a great question, Jonah. There's a lot more to talk about there, but certainly I think my background in pro sports provided me with those attributes as I shifted and went on to do other things in my life.
Yeah, and you've moved most recently, I guess, you're in Nashville now, and you're investing heavily in the multifamily space. you want to talk a little bit about how you first got involved in that and why you chose multifamily kind of to be an investment vehicle that you find favorable?
Yeah. So I think the inspiration came for me over the course of my career. My wife and I, our family, we moved a good bit. For me, every 2 or 3 years, we're kind of, and that's just the nature of kind of this journeyman's role that I played and a lot of enforcer types like me played. You're accustomed to moving around a good bit as part of their career.
So you played for how many teams did you actually play for?
8 teams altogether. Detroit, yeah. Carolina, Hartford, LA, Anaheim. You mentioned the 2 out in California. Eventually retired in Nashville Predator, but I chased the puck around for a good long while. I really did. Part of the reason I mention that is, the introduction or the interest in real estate kind of came from, hey, where's a good place to buy a house? Where could I potentially see some appreciation in the investment that I've made in my house? And we did quite well over time, but really began to, I guess, develop an interest in real estate and really develop kind of an eye for what is a good investment. A logical kind of extension from that is to go on into income earning properties, right. Not just, investing in a single family, a primary residence, but hey, how can I get into real estate that pays me money to be invested in it? So you begin to develop an eye for, we started out in some single family homes and then ultimately moved on to multifamily. I mean, you can make a similar or even larger investment, have more units. You've got economies of scale as you kind of get into properties that, by virtue of multiple doors, each are paying you, something in the way of net operating income to be invested. So I've enjoyed that. I've really enjoyed, developing an interest and some experience in that area.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I want to just, give a quick plug because you put out a book last year, right? Kind of autobiography, right? They're called The Grim Reaper, the life and career of a reluctant warrior, right? So anyone who wants to, who's seen that or knows who you are and, has followed your career as someone who had a bit of a reputation as a fighter, right? Someone who was on that kind of line that took that role. And as you said, it was kind of a niche kind of role within that team that brought something, which is probably hard for a lot of people who are not hockey fans or don't follow the sport to understand or relate to. But, obviously you kind of took that role and even if it was something that you didn't want to do. So what inspired you to share your story through this medium, this book?
Yeah, and I had an opportunity to write this book, to be involved in that project for several years before I ever eventually decided to pull the trigger and go in that direction. And I suppose it kind of came down to the following realization. I resisted that idea early on just because I didn't really think I had a lot of story to tell. Again, 4th line left winger for my entire career. What does a guy like that have to contribute? But I began to realize, for a guy like me who got to the NHL by a rather unconventional path, I didn't take the typical, amateur to elite junior hockey and then on to a career in the NHL. I got there kind of by way of a meandering path. And then true, you mentioned it, when I did eventually secure a position in the NHL, it was a rather unique role that I played. And then since that time, I've gone on to do other things. My point in saying that, Yona, is when you take a path like that through life, you learn some things. And you learn some things that aren't necessarily just specific to the game itself. I have been so encouraged, having written this book, sharing the lessons that I've learned through my hockey career and even beyond. But I've had people that work in other vocations, other industries, speak these encouraging words back to me. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for making yourself vulnerable. I really learned a lot from that. And these folks don't play professional hockey. So that really, I think, was the primary justification behind the book, just sharing some of the lessons I've learned and kind of letting folks peek behind the curtain a little bit.
Sure. And, I look forward to checking that out. And I'm going to put a link in the show notes here. So if anyone wants to check that out, the Grim Reaper, we're going to I'll put a link over there for you guys.
Wonderful. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And, I'd love to just jump right into the final four over here, Stu.
Okay.
So yeah, the first question I have is, what's the worst job you ever had?
There are a lot of bad jobs that I have had over time. So, and one is documented quite well in the book. My mom grew up on a dairy farm, and when I was a teenage boy, I worked on that dairy farm most summers, and I knew quite quickly I wasn't going to be a dairy farmer for a living. It's a hard, hard life, but it taught me a lot. I wouldn't say that was my worst job. I once worked on this old riverboat. I think it was called the Fintry Queen in my hometown of Kamloops, British Columbia. This boat sailed up the river, it sailed back down the river, and I was kind of the galley kid. I hung out, I schlepped hot dogs and soda on the boat to folks that were traveling, and I was at that job about 2 days. Did not care for that job. Did not care for that job. I couldn't master the knot to get this dang boat tied to the dock.
Oh man, yeah. Any job you have, after 2 days, farewell.
Yeah,
it's not meant for you.
Exactly right.
What's a book that you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
I'll bet you've had other folks on your podcast and asked this question. I bet this has been the response, but this is a book that's had this kind of broad impact. Rich Dad, Poor Dad for me was something that I think that really helped shift my views about money, and really, as much as anything, yes, investing, but more my spending habits and the way I manage my money. And I think the key thing I took from Rich Dad, Poor Dad was just what things out there are worthy of my investment dollars, insofar as how will they yield a return for me? Will they pay me dollars for me committing that money into this particular investment vehicle? So I got a lot from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. As have a lot of folks.
I think, and we've definitely had that as an answer. But I'm curious to know, at what point of your life did you come across that book?
Oh, not till rather late. I was probably mid-40s.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so rather late.
Yeah, but it definitely has impacted, tens of thousands, millions of people out there. So, third question for you is, what is a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
That's a good question. I'm going to share the one that Jennifer, my wife, and I have been working on during the pandemic: swing dancing.
Really?
Oh, we've been doing a little bit of swing dancing. Anytime we've been out, usually it's at a wedding or something like that, and you can see folks. Actually, I should reference my parents, because they're both, even in their 80s, my parents are wonderful swing dancers. But I've always just been so, I suppose, enamored with the energy and the way it looks, and the fact that people seem to be, when they do that and they do it well, they really seem to be celebrating the music in a unique way, or moving to the music in a really unique way. So Jennifer and I have been working on that. We've got some distance to travel there, but I want to see us improve at the whole activity, swing dancing.
That's great. That's a good one. And I agree with you. I think it also shows, it's like, like a lot of dancing is, but it's like a sport in a way, because there's so much movement, there's so much activity, there's so much in tandemness, if that's a word.
Yeah, and I if it's not a word, we all know what you're trying to convey. But I love that, how the couple really, you're working on that together, and it takes a good bit of practice. So that's been a great kind of a couples relational activity for us in pandemic times.
Oh, that's awesome. And fourth and final question is, what does success mean to you?
The ability to live a life. And I really think I am, close to arriving at this station in my life. I'm beginning to realize I've probably been here for a while and didn't realize it. Live life on my own terms. If I don't like something that I'm involved in, the ability to walk away from it, even if it's something that pays me money, the ability to walk away from it because it doesn't suit my interests, doesn't suit my needs and my ambitions at that moment in time. That, I realize to arrive at that station is a very fortunate one. And I couldn't begin to put a percentage on that, but I know there are a lot of people in life that never get to entertain or perhaps arrive at that destination. So that for me really is just the ability to be involved in the things that interest me, that challenge me, that I enjoy, and to be able to live life on my own terms.
Yeah, that's a really, really great way of looking at that and that definition. It's amazing to me because I find everyone has a different definition, and that's what's so unique. And that's why I ask it, what does it mean to you? And I think everyone is totally right because there's no wrong answer, and they're all beautiful, ways of seeing that. And so that's wonderful. And I appreciate you, taking the time out here today and sharing this. Where can our listeners find you, or where can people reach out to you?
Well, you can get to me in a lot of different places. I'm on Twitter at @ASGrimson, stu.grimson@hotmail.com. That's my personal email address. You can certainly get me there, stu.grimson@thirdhome.com. If a luxury and private property travel club is something that interests you, Third Home is a rather unique concept. And in our next time together on a podcast, we can talk more about that. But I'm not hard to find.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I appreciate you taking the time out here today and spending it with us. And I just want to wish you continued success.
Thank you, Yona. I really enjoyed our conversation. I enjoyed our time together.
Yeah. And to our listeners, thank you again for joining us. I hope you got a lot of value out of this. I certainly did. And remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.